Eric, good morning.
Morning, Sammy.
Give a couple of more minutes, Eric. Hoping Deb said he's not able to join. He's have a conflict.
Yeah, I suppose we could review the white paper if we don't get quorum, but I
Yeah,
need to
we
do
can.
that. I need to go after that today anyway, if I can just find some time to do it.
Yeah, let's.
We
Let
probably
me
don't need to
bring.
record that on Zoom, but you know.
Yeah, I don't know. The Zoom is good here. Let me share. How do I move this guy? Are you able to see?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay. So the top level, I added your name. Even you made a lot more modifications to the doc. Kill this guy.
And then what's our policy on Mohan's name? I mean, he was an author, but he's not at Intel anymore.
Yeah, I talked to him and he basically said, anyway, he contributed. I think it is was done as part of the last year. But we are doing is updating revisions. He kind of said like he can leave it.
Yeah, I'm fine with keeping his name on it. I just don't know if we want to keep Intel on his name.
Yeah. Let's probably before we publish it, let's check with the legal side and see what they recommend.
Okay. Yeah, I just want that on our bin
Right.
list of things we
Yeah.
need to resolve.
Right. Probably put a highlighted here that we will not forget. So I kind of also added like some of the people who have given an input here. I'm thinking this probably when we go to the final version, we should probably remove all the previous ones and make it as an initial publication or something like that.
Right. Yeah. From the time it's published, we'll start a new revision history, right?
Correct, correct. And the executive summary is let me make it a little bigger if you want to see it.
Okay. In this, according to the summary, we're talking pretty much exclusively about PUE.
Yes.
Okay.
IUE we want to cover as a separate paper. We are not saying exactly what we want to do, but at least we are pointing out what are the things issues. So you can think of this is a paper to lay out all the problems. IUE is kind of creating a solution there. Sorry, okay, in the first section, Eric. Executive summary.
Yeah. The only other thing. Yeah, I think no, this is fine. We did have a couple other joins. Jeff and Dave are here.
Okay. Hi, Dave and Jeff.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Dave, I saw your mail. I was not sure which organization you are in, so I didn't give access.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I sent you another email today, so.
Okay, I will
Thanks.
do it after the meeting today. So the other one, so we are kind of going through the paper. I put it in the SharePoint. So then definitions, we don't have a new definitions. I don't know whether we want to add any additional definitions here. I kind of pointed that maybe I think now I'm thinking back, probably there is a section on definitions. I should hold in that things here. Only new thing that we are adding is non-IT power. Some additional wording we added there. I will go to that later. And the list of abbreviations mostly used, we kind of put it here. Maybe we need to come through and see maybe anything else we are missing. And let me look at that. How do I get rid of the top one here? It's occupying a lot of space. So basically like history and definitions. And we're going to like partial PUE and what is the measurement, static, dynamic, load variability sampling, and generally reporting period. Then we are spending some time on power delivery architecture, cooling architecture, and some geo impact, water impact, future work that we want to do and conclusion on it. And the reference license and other things as kind of standard for white paper from OCP. And intro, basically, we are saying that we are working on the enhancements. Are you guys seeing my pop-ups or you don't?
I don't think we're seeing pop-ups. We do see your cursor.
Okay, good. Okay. The other one is so given executive summary, we add a lot more weddings there. We just kind of reduced this one to intro. Is we are addressing the sustainability part of the project, and we are making improvements. And this paper summarizes work that is done by DCEM to point out the PE related items. And for a PUE, we are just giving us some initial history how it started. And then it's mentioned even add some ISO standard that is defined. And also what is the categories available there. And then high level, we are trying to say what is a PUE. And there's a picture here and down kind of trying to show this differences like total DC energy going in and your power converter and heating, cooling, and ancillary spaces are non-IT, and the remaining is IT. That's what we're trying to show here. And for the definition part, I referred to this white paper that is government and other bodies combined together. They put white paper that I referred to there. And mainly on this particular paper, in addition to that, I think we are trying to point out some of the things related to system power or conversion losses as well as fan or cooling related losses. That is not accounted part of the PUE. That's just want to highlight that particular part that is included here.
Yeah, you may want the word comprehended there versus included. Right, because basically they just considered part of the IT energy, whether that's what was, intended or not.
Okay. Then we are kind of referring to, I don't know, it's going up and down here. Partial PUE, I think that again, we are trying to say like, given OCP, you're not probably defining a complete data center for defining PUE. The reason you want to define not a rack level or a multi-rack level so that at least you can kind of define what it is and so that you can potentially able to make theoretical estimations on the partial PUE. And if you're really looking at a data center level, it's a combination. As long as you combine all the partial PUEs together, then you're getting a complete DC PUE. And measurement side, we are saying static and dynamic. Static basically meaning like you're computing everything. It's more of a design phase work. Dynamic is basically your operational phase where you're really like you're loading the system and you're really like testing on the normal operational perspective. And on the load side, we are trying to show that when you load the system, your power and cooling is going to, if you have a smaller load, you have more power and cooling is going to be less. When you have a larger load, your power and cooling are also going to be more. And the variability does play into picture on your final PUE calculations. At what place you calculate the PUE, the number is going to vary depending on the load. And the sampling period, it's up to the vendors. How do you sample it? The main thing is the measurement reporting, and I'm kind of pointing out to this same white paper here. There are recommendations made in the white paper to follow the reporting. It's generally a monthly, cumulative monthly reporting. Then we are going through the power delivery architecture. We are looking at the power converters, different power converters play into picture. And also talking about the traditional rack where you have a 12 volt, 48 volt. Those supplies are in OCP. It's available. And depending on the one you use, your losses may be higher or lower, depending on how you're going to use it. And kind of highlighting the traditional rack, how it is, and highlighting DC bus bar, how it is. Then we are touching on the DC cooling architecture. We're talking about traditional cooling. Basically, you have racks and you have chillers and taking the power out of the system going to the cooling tower. Then also we are touching on the directed chip as well as where your heat exchange. You have a combination of fan and cooling loops reduced there, or you could have a secondary loop and a primary loop to have a combination of those things. I think what we are really like each section, what we are trying to highlight is if I have this secondary loop here that is not accounted as part of the PUE, it's goes part of the IT power.
Right.
And then we are talking about the immersion cooling. Again, if you can see from here, it's all going up. So it's the whole cooling is accounted as part of the DC. Whereas if you are looking at the traditional or all the fan and other things, it's accounted part of IT. And we have kind of summary of various cooling technologies and where it is accounted. They were kind of, this is example summaries. It's not really real on right. That's a way, but top its examples. And you can see from here like where it is accounted, right? It's do you have fans or you have how big how it is used, and how much is a power loss, and where is it accounted. And we are talking about load. Depending on the load, you have a more thermal or more power that going to appear. And if you are operating at ideal load, all the power consumed by the system is not producing anything useful work. And also we are trying to say, unless you represent the load as part of your metrics, you are not sure where you are measuring. You are measuring it ideal, or are you measuring at peak or 50 or 60%? Given that metrics are not available, it's difficult to compare from one PUE to other. So again, some example we put like, hey, unless you put it in this load, you will not able to comparison purpose. But PUE by itself saying that it is designed not for comparison purposes. And also we are talking.
And on this one, I think the discussion is about, whether we have kind of correlated pairs of metrics where loads reported independently, and you want to associate PUE with a reported load at the time of an average load at the time of the average measurement, because if PUE is reported over some period of time, right, not an instantaneous thing, usually, right?
Correct.
And then we have to define whether we mean percent of power or percent of something else when we talk about load 40, load 60, right? What's not clear in your cartoon above is percent of what, right? So the graphic above, I think, probably needs one more iteration, right? For two reasons, right? The first, something to clarify how we're using the term load, right? And then second, I think the cartoon on the right, I don't know of any system with a load line that looks like that.
Yeah, you want to be smoother curve, not kind of a step
well,
curve, right?
The slope is steeper from idle to near peak and then shallower from near peak to ultimate peak, right? Not the other way around. You don't see an inflection point where it gets steeper beyond 50%.
Correct. Yeah, this picture, I think,
yeah,
right, yeah.
Just don't like that. I think, something
right.
that someone actually measured somewhere would be better to use, even though we're not specifying which system that is.
Yeah, I need to put some data points so that it may look smoother rather than a step.
Yeah, if you want a synthetic one, and I've obviously got multiple of those you could start from. I can just send you one. Right?
Sure. Yeah, I will.
And they're more. They would track more what a spec power curve would look like on a server that you got your hands on in the last year or two, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, I will update it. I think the base thing here is what we are trying to communicate here, right? Yes, each data centers are reporting the PUE, but there is no clarity on what particular load it is, either average load or a particular point, right? It's unless you tell exactly what is going on, it's difficult to compare. That's all we are trying to highlight here, right? It's what intended purpose of PUE is satisfied today, as long as you report how much it's IT and non-IT, it is satisfied. But what you are highlighting is here's opportunity. It's not comparison purpose. If you have the numbers included, then you could probably potentially able to compare from one data center to other.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing I was going to let you get through the paper first, but the other thing we have to address and kind of close out is we're kind of treating this through the review so far as if comparison is acknowledged to be a good thing in and of itself, and so trying to make it easier to compare is acknowledged to be a good thing. I don't think that's generally true, right? PUE, when it was published, was not intended to be used for comparative purposes. It is often used that way, but I think just an implicit assumption that being able to compare is a good thing isn't the way we want to leave this paper. I think we want to explicitly clarify why comparison is important, right? And comparing, this year to last year or next year to this year is really what we're after. We're trying to make it possible to tell whether you're improving or not and have an accurate metric, an accurate measure of whether things got better or worse. You can also compare, implementation of data center A to implementation of data center B. And there are cases that's useful too, right? But for purposes of improvement, we want a better metric.
I think that's what we are trying to highlight in the executive summary.
Yeah, father first or further improvements. Yeah, and I just think we want to make sure that that comes across before we justify a lot of these, or we qualify a lot of these shortcomings as complicating comparison, right?
Correct.
So one quick thing on that comparison, like if we are trying to, show the improvements in the data center compared to last year or before that, what would the person stating the PUE miss if they just provided the PUE number and informed that it was at the same workload as last year without stating what percentage that workload was?
Even that is kind of hard, right? Shruti, like you are not probably running the same workload, right?
I mean, that's on them on how they measured it, but considering
Right.
that, of course, we want them to measure at the same workload every year anyways, for it to be comparable. So if they are measuring at the same workload and then they are able to just state that this PUE is at the same workload as the previous year, that provides that comparison without them stating the workload. So is that considered okay? I'm just raising the question because
Yeah. Thinking through, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So I don't think that's the same thing, Shruti. And maybe some of it's just terminology, right? We're not that sensitive to what the actual workload mix is. We're sensitive to the average utilization over the reporting period.
Right, and that's what is meant by the workload percentage. I think that we are expecting them to state. So as long as they're saying it's at that same workload percentage or the same utilization.
It's a load when we say it's a power percentage, not a workload percentage, right?
So if you go down, I think wherever you state 40% load, 60% load, for some examples that you would put down over there. But essentially, okay, let's call it utilization. But what stops that user from saying that this is at the same utilization percentage, and that's all, not state the actual percentage?
So that's I mean, in this paper, we are trying to highlight the problems rather than some example we put say, this is a possibility, not really saying this is how you should be representing it. The paper is to kind of highlight what are the different things you want to consider rather than giving a solution, right?
So the paper is not to give that they have to exactly state this PUE number at this load, but it is for them to understand that it has to be considered at the same load so that it is comparable.
Yeah, I think what we wanted to use this paper is to highlight all the problems that exist in PUE and augment IUE to kind of solve some of those problems that we are stating here, right? And this is not a solution paper, right? It's more of a opportunities are identifying problems in PUEs that we want to solve. And some example we gave is kind of to say like 40% load and 60% load. When you say it, then you can probably potentially compare apple to apple, right? Otherwise, somebody saying I have a better PUE without telling the load, we are not able to compare it.
Yes, I get that. I'm just trying to sort of voice out my thought when we basically said that it's to show the improvements in the data center that the user could actually show without stating this percentage, but letting us know that it is the same or the same utilization.
Yeah, I don't think that really works, Shruti. I think for a couple of reasons, right? I don't think you can compare two different data centers that way versus the same one year to year. And second, I'm not sure the load is a static target, right? I think trying to improve utilization is an independent variable. Planning for it to be the same year to year is not probably a good thing. And I don't know you have positive control over getting the exact same average from one measurement to the next, right? So I think we have to talk about what granularity we think is useful, but I think reporting the actual load is pretty important versus just having it someone assure you that it's the same and not changing. I don't think that's a good approach.
Yeah, this ties into what we are stating the use is. So like we were saying that to show the improvements in the data center, that would be satisfied. Now, how they are getting to the same utilization, of course, whether they, because load is constantly moving and stuff like that, whether they can get to the same utilization and state that is a separate question. But showing the improvements in the data center would basically get satisfied by that. Now you mentioned.
Yeah. What you're saying, Sruti, is if I'm operating 40%.
Yeah, 1 second. But you stated one second use where you said comparing two different data centers, right? So that I understand would not be, satisfied until each data center is actually specifying their load. Oh, actually, let me think this out loud. If I have two different data centers and I mentioned that at the same load percentage, I have the PUE for both of those, does that not let me compare those two?
You can compare within your data center.
Yes.
Because you are saying I am 40% load today, this year, and my PUE is, I don't know, 1.10. And next year I am saying I'm still having 40% load. My PUE is 1.08. You're saying I have 2% improvement, right? But the same thing you have to compare with another person's data center. He will not able to duplicate because you're basically saying without telling the load, other person cannot understand what is that meant for them, right?
Right. So that ties into the fact that the actual use for this we are saying is because we want to compare the data centers by different operators. So going back to Eric, what you were saying is it goes with the assumption that comparison is a good thing, right? Because that is the main use. Showing my own data centers improvements year over year would not, necessarily need stating the load, but yeah, comparing the DCs by two different operators would need.
Yeah, well, and I think maybe take this conversation one step further, right? One of the things we want to prepare the ecosystem for is to be subject to some guidance or regulation on how efficient the PUE measurement is, right? So an absolute PUE requirement that is already cropped up in multiple geos, right? And we want to standardize how you're measuring PUE so that when it's compliant with some requirement, 1.3 or better or whatever, we know what that means. And some of those potential regulatory requirements also may stipulate a utilization goal. Now, we're ahead of any published regulation at this stage, right? But the EED is definitely heading that way, and the standard in Germany is running off ahead of that.
Sure. I mean, you're saying someday there could be a regulation that states the load has to be stated in the measurement.
And as we try to propose improvements to how you do PUE, we want to be ready for such regulation, right? Yeah. But I think this just goes back to that first point, right? I don't think we want to try to justify all of this with making it easier to compare. I think we have to be explicit about what it is that we're trying to improve, right? And why there are important improvements.
Right.
I think another way of saying is a PUE stops down, right? And what we are trying to do from OCP perspective is bottoms up, meaning systems to rack to data center, right? If you are able to understand system level, I don't know whether we call it PUE or IUE efficiency, then if it is all efficient, then from data center level, it's going to be efficient, right?
So the second thing, second usage that you're mentioning, that be ready for a regulation that might come in the future. I think we should really, sort of state that in the beginning, because I think that will help folks, adopt this more easily than, enabling comparison with other DC operators. Does that?
Agreed. Yeah.
So we should actually a little bit elaborate it from that point of view, that, as regulations for these come in, it will enable the DC operators to be ready for that.
Yeah, it's better to add an executive summary or a intro.
Yeah, or maybe just motivations in the intro, right? We can put motivations in there and then decide what to say in the summary about it. Yeah, and I could probably help with language there. I do want to come back to the load comment though, because I think when we draw a curve, like the one that I don't like that's in here now, right? Load is referring to a point on the x-axis, right? A percent of peak capacity or a performance or utilization metric. Not a percentage of power, which would be on the y-axis, right? Yeah, this curve on the right. If it was percent power, we would be specifying a point on the y-axis, right? When we specify a point on the x-axis, we're talking about something else, and we haven't clarified what that is.
This is a load, x-axis load, and y-axis power.
Load
TDP.
of what? Measuring what load?
So if we are idle, that means you are not really like preserving any compute really going on. You're trying to consume some power there, right?
Yep. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think that part of the load line is accurate, right? Representative. Right. But what you said in trying to respond was compute, right? Percent of compute.
Yeah, or IT load.
Yeah. You mean
so we need to pick a term and talk about what the x-axis measures. And so when you specify that PUE should have an associated load reported with it, load as measured by what, right?
Okay. It's a.
I mean, I don't think we want EMON CPU reported average utilization, right? But not least because EMON's an Intel tool. Right, we need something to define what we mean by load.
And how do you, another tricky thing is, how do you determine load if that data center operator doesn't have access to look at the load of those IT, right? So
yep, that's even more tricky, right? And this is so, and I'm not trying to just be a pain in the ass, right? I think this is just, in order for this to be actionable for people in receipt of the paper, this is a big challenge, right? To try and come up with some workable way to wrestle with that. In the Green Grid working groups, for this first wave of reporting to the Energy Efficiency Directive in Europe, people can see their power, right? Because they have to report that for PUE already. So you can tell kind of percentage of the peak power I've ever seen, or percentage of the provisioned power, allocated power in the data center. I could tell you what that number is roughly, with some precision. And to Dave's point, most data center operators can't tell you what their average load is in terms of how much of my compute capacity am I using. But I think that's what we want them to estimate and report with the PUE. And now, we can try to stay out of how that estimation is done, but we are creating a complexity for the reporter.
Yeah, I think the reason we are trying to bring up this load has an impact on power thermal, other IT and non-IT. What do you call?
How much is overhead and how much is useful? Correct. Yeah, piece. I get that. Right.
But we are saying is the PUE does not provide you that flexibility to kind of understand and report it, right?
It does not.
That's what the issue is that we want to solve. That's the reason we are trying to say, like, these are the issues.
But we haven't proposed a solution. Yeah. We have not proposed how you're supposed to measure the load that you report
Right.
with.
Maybe
So if we're
this
trying to
example
solve
of
that, we're
putting
failing.
is making up throwing people off. Maybe it's not use this.
I mean, if I read this paper, I don't even know what that means, right? There's no attempt in the paper to define what that means.
Okay. So
Yeah.
at least we need to define what is the load. Then at
Yeah.
least it's clear. Yeah, I will. Yeah, I made a note.
Yeah. The question is, do you do that at the PDU level? You know, where would you measure that if you didn't have access? That's a tricky one. So.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. It's
Yeah.
tricky. I think it's not an easy thing to answer, but I think we can't propose that you report the load and then not tell you what load you're supposed to report.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think the way we kind of took, I believe in the another presentation we were trying to make is TDP minus idle power. The remaining you could potentially divide it, assume it's a linear. Then you can say like if 1000 watts is TDP and 200 watts is idle power, right? 800 watts is your real computing energy. And you could potentially divide equally if you are assuming linear, right? Then you can find the load.
Yeah, but we have to but there's a couple problems with that. Now the graphic's wrong because you're looking at the wrong axis.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, the percentage of power would be measured on the y-axis, not the x-axis, but we marked the load on the x-axis.
Yeah, I could change that. You can redraw the picture, right? At the end, what we are trying to say is, yeah, the load is 0 here and load is 100% here. And if your this picture is not clear, right? You need to be kind of parabolic or
Asymptotic, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So as long as we can say like 50% what that means, and people can say like the load, then the load basically means how much compute it's giving you back, right? Yeah, I will define the load later.
Sorry, so
Yeah.
for clarity, when you mentioned load, you had percentage of power utilization in mind?
No, I'm telling that is one of the ways if you assume it's a linear. Generally, it's not going to be linear, right? It's basically like going to saturate at a certain point. Then it's basically on the curve, or basically like when we say 50%, it is not exactly 50% of your GDP, right? It's somewhere I don't know, 40 to 60% range.
Sure, and I understand the conversation that we have not clarified the load here yet, but I'm just trying to know what did you have in mind when you mentioned load? Like, did you have utilization percentage?
So yeah, utilization percentage, right? How much it's utilized. So totally, you think of how many IOPS it can produce, right? In idle power, active idle, you are not producing any IOPS at all, right?
So this is like alternate CPU utilization.
Correct. CPU, memory, all you can. It's kind of loaded answer, right? At the end, what is your peak IOPS that it can produce, and how much you are really consuming, right? Or how much instruction per second it can execute, and how much you are producing, or it may vary depending on your systems. What you define load, it's based on your total compute it can produce out of it, right?
Sure.
Yeah, this is one of those things where we know what we mean, but if we sit down and try to articulate it, and then to Dave's point, put ourselves in the seat of the data center operator, do they have that information? And if they don't have it, how are they supposed to estimate it?
Yeah, I think that's the problem we are trying to say. Like, you cannot solve it here, right? We need to come back and say like, hey, what is that really need to provide to address those things, right?
I think I'm also concerned that because utilization, like you said, CPU, memory, it includes a lot of different things. Trying to articulate that, like I feel like we'll have a lot of
Yeah, I think Shruti, I would say like we would really want to say we don't have a solution. These are the problems, right? And the
Yes.
solution space, we really need to go back and say what are the things we want to propose as a final solution and get people aligned onto that, right?
Sure.
But at least problem-wise, do we see it's a problem? Do we agree these are the problems that that need to be solved?
Right. I was going to say that then maybe we just we specify that load is in terms of percentage utilization of the systems, but don't try to go into further depth of what that utilization includes.
Right. Yeah. In fact, if you've seen some of the work they have done to justify the performance of the system and trying to measure based on the performance, and the conclusion of the paper was basically said like we don't have alignment on a performance number. People can agree on it, right? I could forward that paper, and that's how the PE side, when they did the work, they concluded, and we don't have alignment as of now. In future, we might need to continue to work on it.
Yeah, we have the same situation.
And I think in here also, I think when we say load, people can also say like, is it are we saying about performance and what workload you're running and what performance is going to be, right? What metrics you want to use?
Right.
Right. Yeah, I think the assumption that we would put potentially in the description here, the data center is sized for some peak capacity to deliver some kind of services, and it's really the percentage of that peak capacity that we're after, and that can vary from data center to data center. And to the earlier discussion, it can vary year to year in the same data center, because the service mix and the service implementation will shift over time, right?
Yeah. So then I think
That would be also a fine way of describing it. Yeah, we can describe it this way and sort of leave it there.
yeah, just put up my note for myself. I think we need to do bottoms up and tops down now, both, right? System level, what we mean, and what is the data center level it's going to be mean, right? So the anything on this the load percentage side that we need to add more?
Okay, I'm done making your life difficult for now.
So, and geo impact, I think what we are trying to compare here is it's all depending on the location, your thermal or water or whatever the things you are going to get to cool the data center. It's going to vary because your weather is going to be different. Month to month variations is going to be there. Year to year variation and location to location variations are there. Unless you tag it with that data, it's again, you may have a identically same data center, but it may produce different PUE numbers depending on the location you're going to operate.
Now there is one possible solution. I know we're not trying to get into too many solutions, right? But climate zone, right, is one approach to this, and there is a published climate zone map that we could refer to. There are a couple complaints, right, in terms of obviously year to year things change, and the zones don't have very good granularity, but if we're gonna, from a data perspective, right, if we're gonna do an at geolocation, right? Is that just like latitude, longitude, or is there some other definition of how we want to do that?
Yeah, I think solution space. So we are trying to say these are the ways to think about it, not really a final solution, right?
Right, but I don't think we want to propose that the solution that what we want is PUE to evolve so you have PUE at China or at PRC. No, that's not good enough, right?
Right,
PRC
right,
is huge.
right.
And some parts of it are hot and humid, and some parts of it are cold and dry, right?
Correct,
And that's really what we care about is, are you in a cold and dry location or a hot and humid location?
Yeah, I think the one of the thinking was if you tag it as a geolocation, at least you can go back and look at all the weather patterns and other things, you can map it back. Like a GPS location, things like that, right?
Right. Yeah. GPS, I think, is that would help, right?
Right.
I just say at Ireland doesn't necessarily help, but at geolocation might. So I just want to be careful. We don't want to suggest something that we don't think is a good suggestion.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think the reason I put a Singapore Island is it's even though it's same data center operating in different locations, you produce. I mean, people can immediately relate the changes, but
Yeah, there are cases where that would help and cases where it wouldn't. Right.
right,
Yeah.
right,
I mean, all of Singapore's in the tropics. That's kind of all you need to know, right? But,
right, right. I think again, you look and suggest like any reweighting need to be done so that makes it clear. I think the point here is that it's a different geolocation, different weather conditions. It's going to have a different PUE number.
yep, agreed. Yeah, and you can copy exactly the same data center design and get a different number based on where you cite it. That's certainly true.
Good. Again, also water, we want to say it's depending on whether you are going to without including WE as part of PUE, you may have a different water usage for that particular system, and depending on how are you using it, you may get a different PUE also. If you want to be more efficient on water usage, then your PUE number might go up. If you're not less efficient, your number may go down, right?
Yeah, I think what's not clear, are we suggesting that you should report both together? That we don't want to see PUE by itself, we want to see PUE and WUE both?
Correct. So then when you, again, comparison purpose, right? If you have PUE number, one data center reporting PUE without including WE, when you look at them together, then it makes sense where you're trading and where you are gaining and where are you kind of not gaining, right?
Yeah, it does seem like we're building up to some data schema here, right? Where you have a PUE number and then there's a set of metrics associated with that number, right? One of them is a load, one of them is a WUE, right?
Right.
And one's a geolocation potentially, right? And maybe that kind of formatting, right, where it's PUE at, and then there's a set of brackets and 3 or 4 values that go with it.
Right. It's geolocation, all this WE or.
And we could format the paper so that as we walk forward, we make that string of associated data longer, right? And that's kind of where we leave it, right? In terms of what we prefer what would be better than just a raw PUE number.
Right. The only thing is, instead of putting the final recommendation, right, we kind of put it as these are the things need to be get done to get alignment with OCP projects and all these things, bodies, measurements, and modeling, and profiles. All these things we need to do as part of the work. I think,
and then an actual format for that data string that goes with the PUE measurement, right? How many values are there and how are those values defined?
Right. So then we can tie into the right. I think the top layer is kind of there are open items now. We do all this work, then those areas at least we get some clarity on how are we going to do it going forward, right?
Yep. And then did we have in here that we want the reporting period to be one of the things? Is that, do we want that to be implicit or explicit, right? That it's an average over the trailing 12 months or some other time period as specified. If you don't specify it's 12 months, or how is that in here too?
Reporting, I pointed to what is the current reporting. I never complained about reporting as a problem.
But when you talked about static versus dynamic, right? We did. I just saying that may be something that we want as an acknowledged future thing too, where we want it to be dynamic and we want it to be an average over a running period up to the report, right? The date that it's reported, it's or it's reported for a time period, and it's the average over some number of months leading up to that end of that time period.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I believe, especially when you are having a systems that is designed and not fully operational, you need to have a mechanism to report for that, right? It's a static. You're designed for this, but when you really put in operational, you may have a different number there, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, and we want to. It's not the peak that it was designed for, or the peak that you ever seen, irrespective of where it has been running. What we want is a report of where it has been running.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think I will try to put that reporting part of it, right? Yeah. And I think the conclusion is basically like we are trying to summarize initial analysis, but not comprehensive fully, right?
Yeah. Well, and we'll come back to what we put in the executive summary too, and kind of figure out which pieces we want to repeat. But if we decide to adopt that getting ready to be regulated kind of posture, we should repeat that here.
Right. Right. Probably you should also want to say some additional work that we are trying to do, that comprehension, not just PE comprehension. It need to have a additional metrics so you can compare it, right?
Right.
I don't know whether you want to evolve the PEA for comparison purpose, or you want to have a totally separate metrics that comes along with it so that you can compare it. Right?
So
Yeah,
again,
I'm more leaning that way, but I don't think that decision's been made. I'm not sure we have consensus on it.
Right. Okay.
again, here also, like, instead of focusing on that we are going to compare dissimilar data centers, we should focus on saying that it will get the data centers ready for regulations that might be coming up, kind of thing. I think that will make it easier to get adopted. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more motivating, you're saying.
More
Trudy.
motivating, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Hey, Eric and Sammy, I don't know if you'd seen the output that we had from the power telemetry Workstream.
No, I don't think I have.
No.
I put a link in the chat there, but so we put up a first draft of a redfish profile for exposing the data, and hopefully that's everything that's needed here to do PUE calculations. So
Oh, great. Okay.
Please start.
Yeah, I'll take a look.
Yeah, I kind of had a friend chat with Daniel, and he was basically said the basic power telemetry PUE is there, but all the IUE things he's looking for us to define and bring it back. And also, I believe the sustainability profile, Jeff, is that formally defined, or still we are kind of looking from multiple teams to get those defined?
Yeah, it's the first draft. So yeah, looking for feedback. That's why I bring it up.
Okay. Yeah, I will take a look at it. Send you some info there. Yeah.
Or just feel free to just comment on the pull request.
Sure. I think we are at top of the hour. I do have another presentation on the things that we want to present for the regional summit, but I think it's mostly a lot of things that we discussed, except I'm putting IE metrics here. But also, I think the main point I think really want to come out of that thing is what are the metrics needed for doing IUE? I believe, Jeff, if you already have some of the info, I will also take a look at it. And in the summary, we want to say like these are the additional, not additional, these are the metrics needed in order to do IUE. That's what I want to call out.
Correct.
We need to jump to. Thank you so much, folks.
Okay, yes, yeah, we are anyway top of the hour, and we will see you, Tim. Thank you for the input. And next week, you let us continue that IUE conversation. Eric, do you need any additional things? I will fix the weddings that we discussed. Going to Green Gate, do you need any additional things from us?
No, I don't think so. I'll if I can just get a pointer to the working document, I can. It's got what I need for getting the TGG feedback that I'm on the hook for.
Okay, it's the same link. I will send you
Okay.
the link again.
All right. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Tim. We'll see you next week.